But I want to make my parents happy. Your parents. They had their chance. You have to be willing to lose the battle in order to win the war. As I was pondering over what to say to the youngsters and maybe even more experienced folks, I had to browse through memories of the past and poke in old wounds. I mean, that's the definition of wisdom after all. Very intense and emotional experiences that were too impactful to be left out without any analysis. When you put so much effort to reassess what happened, it becomes a part of you. That being said, wisdom is tightly bound to experiences and the words will have higher chance to affect you if you have felt something similar at any point in time, but never seemed to find the words to describe those moments. Also, before proceeding, this video is mainly for young men. Every boy needs a guidance, a mentor who can direct him towards the path of becoming a man. That takes time and effort. You can have several mentors. Unfortunately, the lack of strong role models have led the young generations to feel more lost and confused than ever. The life choices should differ between men and women. We have different means to arrive at the same point, a fulfilling life. My audience mostly comprise men, but I'm more than willing to present my take on what young women should focus their energy on so that they can get the most out of life. If that's something you're interested in, let me know in the comments or contact me personally. Now, let's get down to business. If you're into self-improvement, you don't feel too ecstatic about following somebody else's lead. Bettering yourself demands huge portion of accountability and self-awareness. Masculinity is deeply rooted in exploration, taking risks, climbing metaphoric mountains. You'll do a lot of mistakes, and that's okay. Trying your own wings will instill the tendency to do it more often, which is the main reason of this. Understanding that you either win or learn. There is no failure. You have to cultivate that mindset from early on. Usually, the average person has more self-esteem when they are young and inexperienced, if they don't have abusive parents, that is. Then they lose it as they grow older, fatter, more cynical and emotionally wounded. Life beats down on them. That young naivete gives cockiness for you to explore the world. Men operate in a very clear meritocratic fashion, hence why they value hierarchical structures. Being a rebel doesn't imply chaos, rather supervised self-discovery. That's why a mentor relationship is necessary to reassure that the young warrior doesn't bite off more than he can chew. Be the rebel in your community, to break the pattern of the same mundane that has been circling around your peers for decades. Rebels are fostered when youngsters don't believe in what they are served, meaning that they don't respect the elderly, because they lack authoritativeness. The elderly have no understanding for needs of the young minds, so writing them off because they're lost is as dumb as saying that children are delivered by storks. There is always a cause and effect. A healthy relationship between a parent and a young mind should be exactly in a way I described previously, letting kids to explore the world under supervision. But too many parents have no clue on how fostering process should be done correctly, hence why the streets and internet undertake the role of mentorship. Is the bad influence or is the good influence? That's secondary. The point is that parents don't partake in that process. As a young man who tries to get hold of his life, you should avoid conformity, almost to a point where you despise it. It's a feminine trait and will surely hurt you more in the long run. It will corrode you from within, take your will away and make you into a brainless zombie. Question everything, your government, your ideology, your friends, and yes, even your mama. Being social animals, it's easy to fall into a group thinking by following the stream, especially if you are brought up in a very communal environment, where the public opinion forms the way you operate. Buying certain types of clothing, hanging out in certain types of places, listening to same mediocre pop music that everyone seems to enjoy, liking, disliking, adoring, hating, simply being a copycat. That's exactly what creates echo chambers. People seldom reflect over what they really are into. Don't be that guy. Create an independent thought process and form your own opinions on things. If you don't, you'll end up living out somebody else's ideals and values, yet always feeling an excruciating discomfort, like walking around with underwear full of crap.
Don't say penis in this house! Penis!
That is a weight you don't have to bear, where you know you have your underwear on, but something doesn't seem right. This is even more prevalent within families. Although I didn't experience it in an aggressive way, I have encountered many younger people who are constantly under parental pressure. Parents that have a need to form and mold children into these figurines that would fit into their picture of life, their perception of what is good or bad, favorable or disadvantageous for the offspring. Don't get me wrong, I am all for guidance and supervision, as I mentioned previously, but that has to come from a place of true wisdom, not this arrogance of "I have lived several decades more than you, thus I know better." Unfortunately, that is the norm, and youngsters fall into the trap of pleasing wishes of the prehistoric past parents. That self-sacrifice creates a lot of suffering and resentment. No person wants to be forced to do anything, and force in such cases is the result of powerlessness. I have no compelling argument, thus I am forcing you. A bad sales pitch. Nothing will feel as painful as waking up in your older days and realizing that you missed the opportunity to bring something of your own into this world because you were offered golden mountains and ended up scammed with broken promises. You won't work hard on something that you don't believe in. That's why it is crucial that you don't blindly follow the lead of those who on paper want your best, including your friends and even parents. But I want to make my parents happy. Fuck your parents. They had their chance, and now it's your turn. Listen to what people have to say, but always make your own decisions. Make sure they're really yours and not an indoctrination masked under own will. This is an important part of masculinity because it's always on. Unlike women, men are always ready and are much more sexual and visual. Think about it. The whole shtick with sex sells is heavily marketed towards men, particularly because of that reason, so it can become a burden unless you do something about it. Dating coaches for men teach how to get laid. Dating coaches for women teach how to lock down that special guy, primarily because guys, especially inexperienced ones.
Oh, blimey, I'm so rude. I haven't introduced myself. I'm
Alfie.
I'm a blessed man.
Can't think straight when there is a possibility of getting in the sack with a lovely lady. They lose their cool and blow the opportunity. We are animals that have biological imperative, and because we live in civilized societies, we have to filter those beastly urges. Some dudes lose it and give up totally, fitting more into cynicism. Others adapt and find the ways to carry out that imperative. Sexuality is the mojo, the nuclear reactor Tony Stark has. It is the core essence of what you represent. I will make a video on how everything we do throughout the life, in one way or another, is connected to the ultimate goal of procreation. That means suppressing your libido will only lead to a devastating consequences, as will letting it out of control. There are many young men who exercise nofap and other similar practices. Do it if you find them useful. After all, everything is psychological. To quote a dear friend of mine, George Costanza,
just remember, it's not a lie if you believe it.
the best way to deal with it is either become good with women or transmute that energy into your creativity. I get it, it's easier said than done. I have been in those shoes myself. Everywhere you go, you see ass, tits, lips, long hair, eyes. Oh, those shimmering eyes. You have to make an effort to control those urges if you want to win the game. I don't mean that you should be a monk. I mean that you shouldn't focus your energy on actively trying to fulfill that biological imperative, because it never stops. And before you know it, it has robbed you of your youth. And when you realize that you are an elderly nobody, it will be too late to regain that power back. Chasing women takes unfathomable amount of time Time that you can invest in yourself and get better dividends along the journey. Too much female company is not good for you, including your sisters, your mother, and overall having female friends. If men represent a small minority in a social group, they will likely start mimicking feminine traits and identify themselves more with the feminine energy. Have your tribe of masculine men, or don't have any tribe at all. It's better to be alone than in the wrong company. Masculinity and testosterone go hand in hand. A great way to tame the sexuality, make it work for you, is to hit the gym and start building a muscular body. It will improve you greatly in almost every aspect of life. You cannot be a student of self-mastery if you're not training your body. It's not negotiable. Modern societies are full of distractions. The consumerism sucks you into a vicious circle of pleasure seeking. You become addicted to the high and feel restless when the pace of life slows down. You feel you are missing out. You feel left out. Happiness is where you aren't. You are on a constant chase for that hit. As a man, you have to walk the fine line of contentment and seeing the bigger picture. Contentment of the mind for the present moment and strategizing for the future. You are not happy because you want to go somewhere, and that journey is mental. What you do to get there is just a compass, showing you direction. You grow when you're on a path towards the picture you envision. The common denominator here is to practice stoic rational presence. Never include emotions in your decision making. You don't feel joy for your current situation? Good. Now make a rational assessment of that feeling. There is always a logical explanation to your temporary emotions. By doing that assessment, you zoom out and look at the situation outside of the box. You see past the emotional fogginess. You detach yourself from the outcome and see clearly what you have to do to get there. Becoming a man, building, achieving, attaining, acquiring, every goddamn thing worthwhile in life takes time. Long-term thinking is attributed to leaders, creators, givers, wise men. Short-term thinking is attributed to followers, consumers, receivers, mediocrity. You have to be willing to lose the battle in order to win the war. Life doesn't pass by you. Life is here, this right moment, and what you sow is what you reap. If you want a remarkable experience of participating in life, which by the way very few succeed with, you have to sacrifice something. Consumerism doesn't rob you of money, it robs you of time, exactly what you are trading in to feel high, and only temporarily. Short-term thinking is what creates the illusion of life you think you deserve but never will have, unless you do something about it. That's calling for depression, that's calling for existential crisis, that's calling for anxiety and panic attacks. Only you can rescue yourself, by acknowledging the now and slowly building for the future. With humility and acceptance, patience is a great virtue. A man can be stripped of everything, be robbed of every penny, disowned by his peers, lose his family, his children, and yet nothing can take away his mind. Long gone those days where the biggest and strongest would most likely be given all the power within a community. A man isn't born, a man is made. To get there, you have to cultivate a general sense of competence. It is something that you have to work for, both practically and theoretically. As I mentioned before, wisdom is mostly an experienced knowledge, but also can be fortified greatly through written knowledge. It's easier to connect with words if you have had somewhat similar thoughts, or in any other way feel in tune with the message. And that's exactly where the mindset of long-term thinking comes in handy. Maybe you have the awareness of where you want to be and how to get there, but you realize that you lack the tools. Those tools mostly refer to wisdom and knowledge. You get promotion only when you have showed in action that you are competent enough to tackle the challenges that the position requires. You become more picky and cautious with people because, having previously a bad people judgment, you have made wrong decisions in the past and have learned your lessons. Both practical skills and knowledge of people takes time to acquire, and that is where books and mentors come into play. They cannot act as shortcuts per se, but they open up your eyes to things you didn't fully grasp at time and increase effectiveness of your personal progression. It's very important to remember that knowledge is only a potential power. It's when you practice it where you really start to see results. The goal is not to consume hundreds of books a year. The goal is to internalize a life-changing content of few ones that you know for sure will affect your life in a very positive way. It's not easy to find a mentor. People are busy and you might not hang around the kind of people you would benefit from in your life. No reason to panic. Mentorship doesn't have to be personal, nor do those people need to know about your existence. We live in a digital era and you should leverage it. I suggest following between 3 to 5 people by engaging with their work and message, people whom you resonate with. Time will come and you will move on to new ones, which is fine. It's the circle of life. I see that you've made so far, then you should really understand that there is no one-size-fits-all solution to every case. As cliché it might sound, every individual has a unique path and you have to adapt along the journey. Don't take this information as something definitive and be open-minded about your progression. Be very objective with where you are and where you are headed. Being truthful with yourself is what helps you to take right turns and make correct assessments of your experiences. Don't take yourself too serious and check your ego so that you can reassure the clarity of your vision. Remember to have fun and be patient. It's about the journey of the hero, not the final destination.